Welcome, everybody, to another episode of I Would Say Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Levi Stevenson, also the managing editor over at SB Nation's Wide Right and Natty Light. Hope everybody is having a good week so far. At least, especially given the game last weekend and just how it did not go well at all for anybody wearing Cardinal and gold. So we'll talk a little bit about the Cincinnati game. We did discuss it a little bit in the post game show and all that, and post game call in and all that, which we didn't really have much for call-ins because I'm pretty confident nobody wanted to talk about about any of that stuff. So it's it was overall it was a disappointing Saturday. Not much else to it. It was a frustrating game to watch the entire game, but for different reasons each half. So that's kind of fun. You had a different reason to be annoyed in each half. So at least we're changing it up a little bit. Oh boy. So we'll recap Cincy. We'll talk about some of the injuries and just kind of what we know about the few injuries going around, not just the few, but the building number of injuries going around. And then we'll talk a little bit about Colorado. I guess the one piece of news to kind of get out, I'm not really going to discuss it too much because I at this point, I'm not sure how interesting I find recruiting to be, but nothing's been like officially like said on social media that I can tell, but it would appear as though 4-star receiver Mylan Paris is probably going to be decommitting from Iowa State, or will be flipping to somebody or something. I mean, it's disappointing because he would have been one of the top, I think, like a top 3 recruit all time, like maybe the second best recruit all time for Iowa State. Would have been, an awesome fit along, would have been an awesome target for Alex Mansky or, any future quarterbacks. But it kind of is what it is. And, I'm sure, he went on a visit to Oklahoma this past week and he's got another one scheduled for Miami. My assumption is that those two programs have both offered him a significant amount more in NIL dollars than Iowa State has. And it kind of is what it is, for the most part. We like to keep our NIL money to players that are on the team. He would have absolutely gotten money right away, no doubt about it. Just like I think pretty much everybody does, get something. But generally speaking, the vast majority of NIL money is reserved for people that are already on the team, that are already contributing and all that. And wouldn't shock me if Miami or Oklahoma decided that they were going to offer him a bunch more money. I mean, and they are more prestigious programs. I mean, I guess it's possible where it's like a situation where he's like, well, I got an offer from Oklahoma, so I need to at least take a look at it type of thing. That's certainly possible. I think Iowa State's at a point now as a program where it's not just a like automatic. It's not. I don't think automatically Iowa State is just a like, oh, there's someone better offered, so now we're going to only look at them type of thing. I think Iowa State's a good enough program now where they can stay in the recruitment for some of these bigger recruits, up until the end type of thing, even when, a larger school comes along. But unfortunately, now that Iowa State's a little bit, a little bit higher up in the pecking order, we're starting to take some swings at a little bit higher rated recruit, like Jet Thamala and now Mylan Paris and all this, when you start taking a bigger swing at those types of guys, you start running up against the blue blood type schools, against the Oregons and Miamis and Oklahomas and of the world. You start running up against those programs, and it's just kind of part of the game once you start, hanging around up with the blue chip prospects. It is what it is. It'd be nice if we had like some more NIL money to throw around a little bit, but it can also be one of those things where it just kind of it is what it is. High school kids will do what high school kids do, which is absolutely nothing reliable. You know, when a kid tweets out that he's 1000% committed, I mean, that it means not. I mean, verbal commitments are nothing. They don't mean anything. They can tweet them out like they mean something. They just don't. They're not held to anything. You can say, they can verbally commit to a school, but that doesn't actually mean anything, especially if you're continuing to take visits and continuing to talk to other programs. Your verbal commitment functionally means nothing. And a lot of times and anymore, verbal commitments can just mean that you're using it as a way to kind of like announce that, yeah, or to kind of maybe springboard your commitment to larger schools or something like that, which I don't know that that's what Milan Paris did here, but I mean, it is what it is. They'll find another guy. They'll find more receivers. They'll find someone in the transfer portal. They'll be fine. It's a bummer to lose Milan Paris, but there's no shot I'm letting the whims of a high school student affect how I feel about Iowa State as a program going forward. And I'm sure there's lots of people that um that judge and that let their mood swing based on this kind of stuff, and it's just not where I'm going to go with it. Yeah, Brian says, as always, don't lose any sleep over 17-year-old kids who don't keep their word commitments. That's what it is. High school kids don't know shit about anything, and they just we were all high school kids at one point. High school kids don't know shit. They don't know anything about the real world, but the world, about the world outside of kind of their little bubble. They are waffly. They are non-committal. They are, just be by way of them not knowing a lot of stuff. They change their mind all the time. It is what it is, and we move on. So, Dukester. So the all we did was we just talked a little bit about how, while it is not official, it does appear as though the 4-star wide receiver commit Milan Paris will probably be flipping to either Oklahoma or Miami, who has just now decided to offer a scholarship, like, at the beginning of his senior season or partway into his senior season, after Iowa State's had an offer on him for like a year and a half now. So it is what it is. At this point, a lot of those larger schools tend to use schools like Iowa State as their scouting department. They don't really bother doing their own scouting. They just wait for, they wait for programs that are known to have a good eye for talent, and they wait for them to offer, and then they sit there and just poach that stuff because they can. And it sucks, but it is what it is. All right, so let's talk about the Cincinnati game. I don't want to, but we're gonna, and you're all gonna be here to go through it with me. Coming into this game, I think this was a game that at the beginning of the season was not one that we were had circled on the calendar necessarily, because we didn't really know how good Cincinnati would be, and we were pretty sure Iowa State was going to be pretty good, but we kind of assumed Cincinnati would still be bad, or not great anyways. Maybe better than last year, but not great. And after they beat Kansas, I still wasn't ready to declare them an amazing team or necessarily, because because Kansas's defense is monumentally bad. So I wasn't really ready to go quite there as far as they're a high end team, but they're clearly a team to be concerned about. And I would say, losing two of their top corners in the same week to season ending injuries sucks. There's no two ways about it. And they're also missing their kicker, which, against Arizona, missing Kyle Conradi didn't matter. But against Cincinnati, you could argue it made a big difference, because there was a number of drives where, they could have lined up Kyle from 50 yards and they've been pretty confident that they were going in. And it makes the game a lot closer. But, some of those drives you had to just kind of eat it, and you had to try to get the touchdown. You had to try to convert, and sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. And probably at least 3 or 4 empty drives inside the Cincinnati 35 could have been avoided had they had Kyle Conradi. So that injury was there. But in the end, I mean, so you look in the first half, Cincinnati is just running the ball constantly, just gashing for over 10 yards a carry, just run and pound and pound and pound and pound. And, Iowa State has a couple early flags that are really uncharacteristic of of Matt Campbell's program. Basically, procedure type penalties that they really don't get very often. They had some illegal formations. I mean, for what it's worth, the refs seem to be like they they didn't miss anything. I mean, they were calling penalties all over the place. It was kind of unreal how many penalties they were blowing for. I mean, they were. I didn't really see any penalties most of the day that I was really questioning necessarily. Like I think the ones they threw flags on were penalties, but it just I hadn't heard the whistle so many times that in one game before. But the Cincinnati offense was just moving the ball. They were doing whatever they wanted, anytime they wanted, and the offense was really struggling. The offense was really, really struggling early on. The penalties hurt them. They couldn't get the running game going. Rocco missed some really easy throws that he usually doesn't miss. And you're at 31 to, I think it was 31-7 going into halftime. We're all like, well, this is 100% over. And yeah, but then they go down and they get a score right before halftime, and they're going to get the ball right after halftime. So it's like, okay, well, if they can go score, halftime score, we're somewhere. We're getting closer. We're marching in the right direction. The defense have been getting gashed all day. They've been finding room, and there tons of room in the running game. Some room in the passing game. And you get to the second half, and the defense is much better. The adjustments they made were clearly working. The Cincinnati offensive line had a really good day. They have a good offensive line. I believe now I'm ready to declare that Iowa State has a pretty good offensive line. I know that's like heresy around here, but I'm ready to declare that Iowa State actually has a pretty decent offensive line. But Cincinnati's offensive line had a great day, especially in the first half. Second half, they made some good adjustments. There were a couple key players for Iowa State had really bad days. Dominic Orange probably had, was he playing hurt because of the shoulder stuff from Arizona? I don't know. If he was, that would kind of make sense because he probably had his, one of his worst games as a full-time player. I don't know about as a Cyclone because of, his freshman season. I don't remember exactly, he was kind of in and out his freshman season, but as a full-time player, really over the last couple of seasons, I would say that was easily his worst game. He just was missing tackles. He was getting pushed around. I'm inclined to believe that it might have been because of a shoulder injury or something, but either way, Dominic Orange having a bad game makes everything else a lot more difficult for the defense. Caleb Bacon had a decent game, but Carson Willich, holy cow, Carson was awesome against Arizona. He was really, really good. He was all over the place. He was making plays in the running game, and just over and over against Cincinnati, Carson poor guy got trucked by the running back a couple times, and they were ugly trucks. And he just was out of position. He wasn't tackling very well. Drew Surges missed a bunch of tackles. There's a number of Cyclones on Saturday that just did not play well. Now, I do want to say that there were a couple that I thought did play well, and those were the corners. Now, I know early in the game, Trey Bell did give up that long completion along the sideline, but if you go back and watch it, it was really, really good. It was actually pretty good coverage by Trey Bell. If he had turned around his head a little bit earlier and jumped at it a little bit, made a little bit better jump at it, he probably would have been able to bat it down. But in the end, that was kind of just a really, really good throw at Brendan Sorsby and a catch by the receiver. It was kind of just a really, really good offensive play, more so than it was any sort of bad defensive play. I will say though that the rest of the game, Trey Bell looked fine. I will say though that the other corner, Quentin Taylor, that came in. So he'll be one of the starters for this season. Cincinnati threw at him early, and he stood up to the challenge pretty much every time. I thought Quentin Taylor was awesome. He made some really, really nice plays. Made some great plays in one-on-one coverage. Especially, they threw some jump balls at him that he defended really well. I thought Quentin Taylor did a really nice job. Unfortunately, the straw that broke the camel's back was the was the play in the beginning of the was it late third quarter, early fourth quarter. Cincinnati had gone 3 and out a couple times, and then Jamison Patton lets up the deep bomb. They were on like 3rd and 18 or something like that, and Cincinnati, and then Sorsby took the snap and started kind of running out like it was just a QB power, like they were just trying to do something. JMO came up, receiver went behind him. That's all there was to it. That was what ended the game basically. But the second half, generally speaking, other than that, really that one play, the defense did a great job. They forced a few three and out. They forced three and outs in a row, I believe. They recovered another fumble. The defense was doing its job in the second half. Had they done a better job in the first half, they wouldn't. You wouldn't have the offense wouldn't have had to dig itself out of like a 3-score hole in the second half. But I credit does, like John Haycock deserves some credit for the second half adjustments. Granted, you really wish they would have had a better plan to start the game, but it does seem like the way Cincinnati was moving the ball, it seemed to me as though Iowa State was expecting Cincinnati to do one thing, and Cincinnati did something completely different. So, I mean, should go to Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield for coming up with a good game plan. They basically they did something we were not expecting them to do, and that's what it looked like for me in the first half. Eventually, it took a longer than you would have liked to adjust, but they did, obviously did adjust, and it did eventually largely pretty much shut Cincinnati down. But the problem here is that in the second half, the offense was not good enough. Those three and out drives, I believe, ended up in 0 points, including that fumble. Especially they got the fumble, and then then the Iowa State offense went 3 and out really fast. And it was, Abu Sama had an okay day. I thought the offensive line did a good job, especially in run blocking. They kept Rocco upright. They gave Abu some decent room to run. He did kind of what he could. But just flat out, this was not a good game by Rocco. The caveat here is obviously that big hit he took. I think it was in the third quarter. Took a really, really big hit. And he went out for a play or two. And he came back in, which, presumably he went into concussion protocol, and theoretically he obviously passed, and went back in, and we credit to him for being tough as nails. You do kind of wonder if he got his bell rung pretty good, because there was some throws in the second half that he missed, that Rocco just doesn't miss. Healthy, composed Rocco doesn't miss some of those throws. The fourth quarter, Rocco is ordinarily, he is, you can set your watch by how reliable Rocco is in the fourth quarter. And he looked rattled. He looked, off speed. He was missing some throws that I don't know if it was related to that injury earlier, if he was like, initially looked fine from the concussion stuff and then started showing some signs later on. I don't know. But what I do know is that Rocco was uncharacteristically sloppy, frankly, in the second half. And it hurt. I thought the receivers did a pretty good job not dropping ball. I think they didn't drop many, if any, passes. There was a couple of them they would tell you that they should have caught, but there's a couple. I think there was one in specific I'm thinking of. I think it was to Overby. It was either Overby or Townsend that it was, it hit him in the hands, but it was, it was like a foot and a half behind his body type of thing. Like it was a tough catch. And, Chase Soul almost, Rocco, he tried to hit Chase Soul on a crossing route and he threw it high and a little behind him. So Chase had to like jump up and he kind of almost caught it. But he kind of got flipped over in the air and stuff like that too. It was not a good day from Rocco Becht. Not a good day. Dominic Orange and Rocco Becht both need to be better if I would say it's going to win games. So that's kind of what it was. So Duke says one of the biggest things was also time management at the end of the game. So I would agree with you. I was not happy with how that game was managed. There was a number of times where Iowa State well, okay. So the score right before the half, uh, I want to pull these up on the side just to make sure I've got kind of my sequencing right. But the score right before half, they were still going to be down a ways, and they decided to go for two, which because at the time they were down 24 points, or they were getting like they were sorry, they had scored and then they were down 26 at the time. And you could either kick an extra point to go to 25, or you could go for two to get to 24. And um they were at 24. They scored, they could have gotten to 16 if they went for two. They could have got to 17 if they went for one. They elected to go for two, and they got it. And so like, okay, this is interesting. So going into halftime, you're at 31-15. You're down 16, which is two touchdowns and two-point conversions. Some guy on Twitter tried to create one of the most pedantic arguments I think I've ever heard in my life. When I said, it could have been a one-score game, he says, to explain to me how you can get eight points in one score is like, well, in to people that know football, when you say the number of scores or the number of possessions, that is used interchangeably. Sorry, my hat is pissing me off. And a lot of times saying something is a number of scores or a number of possessions is they're used interchangeably, and he was being stupid about it. And I don't think I blocked him, but that was deeply annoying. But anyways, Iowa State was one possession down. They were two possessions down if you got 2-point conversions on both of them. They score coming out of halftime with and that puts them at, let's see. Yeah. That puts you at 22 to 31. Or it could have put you at 22 to 31. Or sorry. It could have put you at 23 to 31. Sorry, I'm getting this sequencing wrong. It could have been 23-31 if you go for two and you get the 2-point. So then it's still at 8 points. You're still at one possession down. Inexplicably, they kicked the extra point and stay down 9 points. You were already down 2 scores. You're already down 2 possessions. And you kick the extra point to go down 2 possessions. What are we doing? Go for 2. If you don't get it, you're down. If you don't get it, you're down 10, and you're in the same exact place as you were before. You're still down 2 possessions. And in the press conference today, Matt Campbell said they didn't want to chase points. That doesn't make sense because you chased points in the first half. Like, it was obviously not too early to chase points because you did it already. And maybe like in your head when you were doing this, you said, like in the first half, you said, oh, let's just go for 2 just because it's kind of fun and we think we can get away with it. Sure, fine. But at that point, once you get that and understand that you're down 16 now, you have to understand you've now just created a situation in which you've potentially cut an entire possession out of the game as long as you keep going for 2 and keep making it. It's basic math. You shouldn't be able to look at that situation and say, hey, maybe we should keep going for 2. If we get it, we move down to a 1 possession game. If we don't get it, we're basically right where we were anyways. The only difference being that a touchdown and a field goal ties it instead of wins it, which at that point, nope, who cares? You're too far out for that to matter. Anyways, so they go down 9. Not the end of the world. It's weird management, but it's not the end of the world. Then Cincinnati fumbles the ball on an option. You get the ball, and you're like, holy shit, this is great. And you go 3 and out, and it's there were so many times in this game that Cincinnati desperately wanted to give Iowa State the ball. or they wanted to, or not just the game, but they wanted to give him the game. Um, so here's your drive summary in the second half. So you got a touchdown that first one. Great. 14 plays, 75 yards. Awesome. Perfect. Cincinnati fumbles it on their next possession. Iowa State turns it over on downs in 7 plays on the next drive. Then they force a Cincinnati punt, 3 and out. Awesome. What does Iowa State do? 3 plays for 2 yards. Run, incomplete pass, punt. Okay. Next possession. Cincinnati turns it over on downs on 4 plays. Awesome. Well, actually, it should be noted that 3-play 2-yard drive was after Xavier Townsend elected to not field a punt, and it went down and down and down and down and down, and Cincinnati down at the 1-yard line. Listen, I love the potential of Xavier Townsend. I'm happy, generally happy with what he's given us so far at the receiver position. Now that he seems to be coming on, he's making some plays. Right now, his up to this point in the season, his performance as a punt returner has been a net negative for Iowa State in a number of ways. He did have like a couple funky returns against, I think he had one against Arizona, I think, that he got like 10 yards on. Other than that, he has really not done anything. I would prefer that they get Aiden Flora back there until Townsend can figure out what the hell he's trying to do. Next play, so they force another 3. They force Cincinnati to turnover on downs. Next drive, Iowa State goes 3 and out because you go Sama run for 3, incomplete pass, unsportsmanlike conduct on Matt Campbell, and then they punt the ball. Cincinnati punts it again. They eat a 15-yard penalty. Then they get a 13-yard run. Then they get a 5-yard penalty. Then they throw an incompletion. Then they get another 5-yard penalty and a 12-yard run. Then they punt it. Defense is doing its job. And Iowa State tries to go down the field, turns it over on downs in 9 plays. They burn 4 minutes to go on 9 plays for 48 yards. That drive ended up weird because Abu Sama ran the ball on 3rd down and dove, and he kind of kept himself off the ground and dove, and I thought he was ruled like way short. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I could have sworn he got it. But then they line up for this QB sneak, and inexplicably the QB sneak they're running is out of like a single back formation. Everybody and their grandma knows the sneak is coming. You're sneaking directly into Dante Corleone, one of the best defensive linemen in college football. Why on earth? I mean, sneaking there isn't necessarily inherently a bad play call there. But why would you not line up in your Maryland eye sneak and have guys that can push Rocco through? Why would you not do that? That's crazy to me. Anyways. So you turn it over there. You're still down 9 points. And then Cincinnati gets the ball. You stuff them. They eat a penalty. And then there comes the 3rd and long. The 3rd and long pass to end the game, basically. And now you're down 16 points again, which was infuriating at the time because the entire thing was like, hey, we can get this thing to 8 points by scoring and going for 2 and getting 2, and then Cincinnati scores again, and now you're just right back to 16 points. So then it erased the negative impacts of not going for the 2 earlier because they just gave up another touchdown, which was a little infuriating because then that math didn't come into play, even though it was objectively like just the wrong call to do. I would say then drives down the field, which is great. They got the ball with 6 minutes left, but they took 4 minutes to run 13 plays, which is way too long. There was times where they were just running the play clock down. Didn't make any sense. They moved the ball pretty well. But and then they somehow Cincinnati, they do the onside kick, and it's the worst onside kick in history. They force a punt from Cincinnati. They should have arguably been able. they obviously did get hosed by losing a timeout earlier in the game on the new rule about it's a new rule intended to design, to prevent teams from faking injuries to stop the clock. But the giant hole in the rule that Iowa State found was if you're actually trying to keep moving and you don't want to have you don't like want to have this, you want to keep moving. Uh and they spot the ball and then the guy goes down with a cramp because it was super hot out there. They just made Iowa State eat a timeout. And had they not made Iowa State, take the timeout, uh, they could have gotten the ball back instead of getting the ball back with like 11 seconds or whatever it was. Uh, yeah, instead of getting the ball back with 11 seconds, they might be able to get it back with like 40 seconds left, which is enough time to go down and potentially try to tie this game. Now, the the end of the last little 11-second drive there was it was maddening to watch. Um, Not because I think like Iowa State was gonna go with it. Like I don't think they were destined to go down and score. But what they didn't do was anything that would help them, that would give them a shot. With Rocco's arm, if you get to the 50-yard line, you're in range for him to take a shot down at the end zone. At least the 50. Even the opposite 45, you're probably in the neighborhood. But the 50-yard line, you're well within Rocco's range to throw that ball. And they could have gotten. Yeah, they took over at the 35. If they can get 10 yards, you can throw a Hail Mary. Cincinnati's playing way deep off coverage, and they throw a pass. They have Ben Bramer over the middle of the field, and Rocco just flat misses him. Just a bad throw. Just completely missed the throw. Had he, had Bramer caught it, got up past the first down, and then went down, they could have spiked it and got another shot at it. Okay, you missed it. You've got 6 seconds left on the clock. They're playing super far off, like 15, 20 yards off of the ball. You absolutely have time to throw it to like Abu Sama on the sideline there, have him catch it, run another 10 yards out, run 10 yards and get out of bounds with 1 second on the clock. And then you can take your heave. But instead, they threw a little crosser thing to Chase Soul, who then pitched it back to Ben Bramer. It was very nonchalant, who then pitched it back to Ben Bramer, who just kind of like jogged upfield and then just kind of meandered out of bounds. So in the press conference today, I think it was Taylor Mauser said that it was a miscommunication. Ben thought he had more time on the clock. Fair enough. I like that. That explains it, but it doesn't really excuse it. That is a reasonable enough explanation. Like if Ben just forgot he thought he had more time, type of thing. Like, sure, that would explain why he just kind of walked out of bounds. But why? How? There's 11 seconds on the clock when you start the drive. How are you not looking up at the game clock saying, okay, we've got 11 seconds here. The first play happens that's missed. You need to look at the game clock and say, okay, this is how many seconds we got left. And I understand that once you're in a play, your internal clock speeds up a little bit, or you're either slow, it doesn't necessarily line up with how real time is going. But I tell you what, that little sequence there, even if there was almost no shot that Iowa State was going to really have a good shot at scoring there, not even taking 11 seconds and all the field in the world to go get 10 yards to give yourself a chance at a heave. And you just didn't even get close. The execution in critical situations there towards the end of the game was just mind-boggling. The onside kick was maybe the worst onside kick attempt I've ever seen. I'm not going to get on Chase too much about that. He probably has literally not practiced that play. That would ordinarily be a Kyle Conradi play, but Chase Smith was kind of thrown into it, and they just had to do something. They probably sent him out there. He's like, I don't know, go figure it out, see if we can get the ball or whatever. And he tried something and it just didn't even come close to working. Um, it's not his fault. Um, but this was not the best day. The defense in the first half was the problem. The second half, it was the offense. And then, late in, middle of fourth quarter and on, it was, I mean, frankly, the biggest failure was the coaching. Rocco missing that throw to Ben Bram on the last drive, kind of half sealed it, but there was so many times before that where they could have done something. I thought Taylor Mauser tried to get a little too cute on offense a couple times. There's a few times where he was a little bit too married to running the ball. I just I thought that was in most games I feel like Iowa State has a coaching advantage on a lot of teams, especially because you got Taylor Mauser and Matt. Um, they're Iowa State can win games just by out coaching the other team. They've won plenty of games by out coaching the other team. And they did it against Arizona. They did it against Iowa. They did it against Kansas State. Iowa State likes to win games by just out coaching the other team. This game was not a good game in terms of out coaching the other team. They got out coached. Period. I mean, no two ways about it. It is what it is. Because of this, now obviously drops to 5-1 and 2-1 in the conference. Fortunately, all the goals in front of them, as far as getting to a Big 12 title game, all those are still in front of you. Granted, you have a lot of injuries to deal with right now, so it's it's a little bit dicier. It's not quite as simple as just saying like, oh, like one loss is survivable, you can still do anything you wanted to, type of thing. That is true, but you have work to do. You've got a lot of stuff to clean up. You got to hope some guys get healthy. You got to hope some guys are healthier than we like, that they get healthy. One of the big losses, I think, in the game, Abu did a good job for the most part. When he was asked to be the primary back, I thought Abu did a good job. But losing Carson Hansen hurt a little bit. There was a couple times where like Carson Hansen's running style would have really benefited them on some of those third and shorts. And he went down with a concussion earlier in the game. But it sounds like it's I mean, just like with any concussion, we're going to keep monitoring him. If he's good to go Saturday, he'll play. If he's not, then he's not. I don't think they're going to throw him out there early if they don't have to. My guess is that they're prepping this week. They're prepping Abu as though he's going to be the bell cow back on Saturday, which could be a big opportunity for Abu, especially if he puts together a really good game at Colorado. And you want to get Carson back as soon as you can, but concussions are just kind of one of those things that they just sometimes you're good in a week, and sometimes it takes a month. Just kind of is what it is. Dominic Orange, hopefully it was just a bad game and it wasn't like a shoulder thing where it's easily fixable and we know he can play a lot better, and it's not just like his shoulders fucked up and now it's just going to be fucked up the whole season. He has to figure it out. You hope it's not that, but we will see. The big question mark for me is Rocco. Is Rocco okay? I mean, I can't imagine they would have sent. I mean, they wouldn't have sent him out. They could not have sent him out there on Saturday if he didn't like pass his concussion protocols and all that. But sometimes the concussion symptoms set in later on. Where he can pass during the game and be pretty much fine, but then late fourth quarter and after the game, he's got headaches and he's whatever. I hope he's okay. I mean, we all do, obviously, but like. Assuming that Rocco is fine and that he just kind of got his bell rung against Cincinnati, I expect Rocco to be better against Colorado. It's just kind of a few of these guys need to get healthy. I mean, Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper aren't coming back, but I think Trey Bell and Quentin Taylor both did a pretty good job. I think Quentin Taylor was awesome. I think Trey Bell it was really just that one play that he missed. But going forward, I'm not too worried about either of those two. I think they both show that they're plenty capable. I thought David Coffey in the few snaps he got, he kind of got bailed out later in the game on a PI, but it wasn't like a bad one necessarily. He was pretty much just hand fighting with the receiver, and that's just kind of what it was. But they've got to get better against Colorado. I mean, Colorado's a winnable game. but they, but Slater is a mobile quarterback. He throws a lot of picks, but Slater is a mobile enough quarterback. They've got some players. They're certainly not a team you can just walk into Boulder and win that game without. They can't play another D+ game and try to win that thing. It's just not going to happen. So you need better late game management, all that. But hopefully these injuries start subsiding a little bit. If they can win this game, get into the bye week at 6-1, give yourself a shot to get a little healthier. Then maybe by BYU get Kyle, maybe by BYU get Kyle back. Hopefully whatever's going on with Dom Orange can fix itself a little bit. Hopefully you get Carson back. There's a few guys that are dinged up that you could stand to get healthy again. So get into the bye week. If you get to the bye week at 6-1, you can kind of reset, re-gauge a little bit. But so let's talk a little bit about the game this weekend. I believe I was going to pull this up here. I want to say Iowa State opened up as a favorite. They opened up as like a 4.5 point favorite. I think it's come down just a little bit because, excuse me. Let's see here. So per Vegas Insider, well, that can't be right. That's gotta be the wrong year. Let's see. Okay, so there we go. So per BetMGM, they opened as a 4.5 point favorite. Which is probably about right, but I sorry, I'm just trying to work through something real quick. So I'd be curious to see what happens here with Deion Sanders at this one. Assuming he's gonna still be on the sidelines, because he mentioned this week that they think he's got more blood clots and he it is another tough spot. But last week they go on the road. They played TCU close for a half, maybe half and three, another part of the third quarter. Then TCU eventually pulled away and won 35-21. But they played with TCU for a while. They were ahead. I think they were up on TCU by 2 touchdowns at one point. They were up 14-0 earlier in the game. Then obviously TCU came back and won. But Colorado's they've got some players. Like I said, Slater started the season, then he got benched for a game or two, and then he's back now. He's completing like 66% of his passes, but he's only got 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions on the season. He does run a little bit. He's a good runner. He's actually now I'm looking at it, he's got more attempts on the he's actually got more attempts on the team than anybody else, even more than Micah Welch. 56 carries, 213 yards for 3.8 yard average, 5 touchdowns. So they'll use him basically 50-50 as a runner and a passer. And then Michael Welch is a good running back. Draylon Miller is a good running back. They don't use Draylon like a ton. Draylon Miller is a wide receiver, but they will use him they'll use him as a running back sometimes. They'll use him in jet sweeps and stuff like that. Amarian Miller is their leading receiver this year. He's got 17 catches for 289 yards, I should say, in a few touchdowns. Joseph Williams is in there as well with 16 catches, 242 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The offense is solid. It's not like amazing, but it's solid. The defense it's okay, I guess. There's not really anybody that blows you away on that. It's especially since they've losing Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders Jr. and Shiloh Sanders and all that. Losing a few of those guys, their defense is taking a little bit of a step back. It's fine, it's serviceable, but there isn't necessarily anybody on this team that kind of blows you away. Keaton Wade is their leading sack guy. 2.5 sacks this year. With that, he's kind of a linebacker, edge rusher kind of guy. Their defensive line is is decent, and it's coached by Warren Sapp, which I guess I mean a decent chunk of Colorado's position coaches are like old NFL guys. Like I think Marshall Falk's on staff, Warren Sapp, a few of those kinds of guys. This is a game where if Iowa State just goes out, doesn't beat themselves, Rocco makes the throws he normally makes, the offensive line continues to play well, they can run the ball a little bit. Iowa State should be able to win this one by a couple scores. They just when Iowa State's playing well, when this team is playing at their best, they're at least a couple scores better than this team. But Colorado is a talented team. They're athletic. That's one of the things that's been the trademark of Deion's teams so far, is that even if they're not the best at everything, they are at minimum very good athletes. And they've got some guys that if Jamison Patton is not paying attention, or he's playing, or he's not he's not doing his job in deep coverage again, they can burn him. They absolutely can. They've got receivers that can run. So this would be on the safeties for staying solid in coverage. This would be the linebackers for being disciplined when reading read options, RPOs, things like that, because Slater absolutely is a threat to run. And that takes eye discipline. Slater this year is a lot like Sorsby was last year, where they like, he can throw, but they don't love to have him throw. They mostly want him to run. They're gonna use him mostly in the running game. He's gonna throw some, he'll throw some picks, but he can make a few throws, which is obviously that was Sorsby last year. Sorsby this year has been very, very good. We saw it a little bit last week too, where he was just really good. Well, yes and no. He made a couple really good throws. He made some good like scrambles on the run and stuff like that, but he also missed a lot of pretty simple throws. I was not as impressed with his accuracy as I was with like the other parts of their game plan. But I said this is one Iowa State just goes in. If you go in, you take care of business, and you take care of the things you normally take care of, where you don't turn the ball over, you don't commit penalties, you make the easy throws, you get a little bit push in the running game, you don't give up deep plays, and you make Colorado work their way up the field. This is a game that Iowa State should win by a score, by 10 points. The question is, will they? And I really do think, though, that this, as my title of this video at least it implies, I do think that this game really can be. Two losses isn't, well, I don't know. Two losses might be enough in this year of the Big 12. Two losses in conference might be enough to knock you out of the title game conversation. One already is like, you can afford one, but two is where it gets really dicey, and you might need some help from other teams, because Texas Tech is probably not losing a game. Their schedule here on out is very soft. And we thought Houston might be able to give them some trouble, but they absolutely did not. Texas Tech's almost certainly going to be in there. They're probably going to be undefeated. Arizona State looks pretty decent right now. Cincinnati is now, they're now a contender here. Utah still seems like they might be someplace, where you have, like, Iowa State gets put in, there probably is going to be a bunch of teams on a one-loss tiebreaker. And if Iowa State loses this weekend, you're not involved in that. And if you lose this weekend, you need help from a lot of teams if you're going to try to make it to the Big 12 title game. So this weekend kind of really is a make or break in terms of if you think you want to try to make it to the title game and try to win a Big 12 title. This is a must-win game. You have no choice, but you basically have no choice but to win out. If you want to be able to get in and not have to rely on a bunch of teams losing games that they probably aren't going to be favored to lose. You have to win out, and it beyond just winning, so that way you can keep your goals alive. If they go in this weekend and lay another egg and look bad defensively, and the offense sputters a little bit, at that point, it depends on how it looks, but at that point, you're almost starting to say, okay, we probably need to recalibrate this thing and reset our expectations a little bit, and say, okay, to start the season, we thought, hey, this could be a 10, 11, 12 win football team. And Now, if you lose this weekend at Colorado, I mean, granted, you're still 5-2. Like you're like something would have really, and like you still have Oklahoma State on the schedule and stuff like that. So I mean, like something would really have to go wrong to not, make a bowl game or something like that. But however much that's actually worth anymore. But laying an egg the second week in a row would be it'd be pretty disheartening. And I think I think it would change the mood a little bit for this season, just with people. I mean, to an extent, there's not a lot Iowa State can do about it because you're missing some key players with injuries, but that doesn't stop. John Tez and Cooper, those are the two big injuries you got besides Kyle Conradi. And missing Kyle Conradi, I think objectively hurt them last game. Like it potentially prevented them from winning, not being able to have those field goals available to you. But besides that, it's Coop and John Tez. And the replacements were pretty good. Like they were pretty decent, like certainly serviceable to a point where like they were not the reason Iowa State lost by any stretch. So, the injuries aren't the injuries to other people aren't what made Rocco miss those throws. Um they aren't what made James Neal jump on a false start early in the game. Yeah. That's James Neal he's played a lot of football at Iowa State, and that's a play he needs to be better on. Just flat out. That's there. I mean, that's all there is to it, really. So it is make or break, both in terms of literally making the Big 12 title game, or even just in terms of feeling like things are still progressing forward. And this is kind of I thought I shared a little bit on the Discord server that I had where I don't enjoy the feeling now. So now that Iowa State has established itself as like it's a good program that's going to be good pretty much every year, and in a lot of years, if in a lot of years they're going to be able to be in the conversation as a conference title contender. But it still feels like it still feels as though we are still scrapping and clawing for like legitimacy at the national level. And I mean, part of that is our own fault because we were so bad for a long time. But it's like Matt Campbell has a really really great run to start his career there, and it's like he goes and wins a Fiesta Bowl, and then they have a down year in 2021. They underperformed. They absolutely did, but it's like, oh, the Campbell's just obviously it's always a 7-5 football team under Matt Campbell. It's like they finished 7-5 one time, but then it's like, well, you got to obviously got to 10-2 in the regular season last year, and they went to the Big 12 title game. You got blown out in the Big 12 title game, but that was a very, very injured Iowa State football team and a very healthy and hungry Arizona State team that had Cam Scadaboo. And, so that was already, retrospectively, that was a game that Iowa State was basically set up to lose. But it's like, well, now if Iowa State doesn't have a really good season again this year, people say, wow, that was just a one-hit wonder type thing. Like, it's annoying because it feels like Iowa State has more work to do than other teams. But just in terms of like national perception, because they're not blue chip recruiters. They're not they're not a program that has a 50% blue chip rating. Bud Elliott's magical have 50% blue chips on your roster. Otherwise, we don't give a shit about you and we don't think you're worth a fuck. That metric pisses me off to no end. But it's a little frustrating too, especially they were able to overcome it last season. They were able to overcome all that adversity last season, which was super super impressive. And you hope they can do it again this year. But man, in 2 seasons where you really wanted to see Iowa State establish itself as a perennial contender, having all these injuries show up is so frustrating. It's like if Iowa State was mostly it was 95% healthy, and like the injuries were really just kind of like depth pieces, backups, third stringers, stuff like that. If that was all the injuries that were there and you had all your starters there, there's no doubt in my mind Iowa State wins that Cincinnati game by a few touchdowns, like a couple touchdowns. And we're Iowa State's in the top 10 and stuff like that. Like it's our vibe right now is totally different, but it just feels like with the John Tez thing and the Cooper thing, and then Carson Hansen goes down to an injury, and Kyle's down, and Rocco gets lit up on that targeting play, and Chase Soul goes out for a little bit, and now he came back in, but Chase Soul goes out for a little bit, and then he's cramping, and then Quentin Taylor's cramping in the game and stuff like that. It's just the endless barrage of injuries. Just it's just it's just demoralizing at a certain point, and it's like it's all coming at like an unfortunate time for Iowa State. But they, credit to them, they kept fighting. They made adjustments. They against Cincinnati. But this weekend is another opportunity. You get to go on the road to Colorado. It sounds like I've heard stories of quite a few Iowa State fans are going out to the game in Boulder. I think they're kind of excited to go play an old Big 12 team. We haven't been to haven't been to Boulder in well over a decade. Almost bordering on 2 decades now. So, I think this is a winnable game. I mean, obviously, Iowa State's favorite on the road, but it's a winnable game against a team that like is pesky enough to stay with you and to give you some problems. But if you just do their thing, Iowa State can win this game as long as they play a solid football game. We can get back on the winning train, get into the bye week, and get healthy, and then prepare for the toughest 3-game stretch of the season, which is BYU, Arizona State, and then at TCU. And then, which is, that's a tough stretch. But if you can come out of that, 3-0, we're feeling great. And none of this ever happened. So that's all there really is to it. So we're going to get wrapping up here because in a few minutes, I got to go record Down the Pipe in Natty Light for the Wide Right Natty Light Podcast Network with Marchie Murdoch and Jordan Harris. So Wide Right people, you can look for that in your feeds tomorrow morning. But I appreciate everybody in the comments today with chat in the engaging conversation and all that. I really, really appreciate that. We'll be back again on Saturday. We'll have post game, and then we'll be back again next week, normal time on Tuesday, for the weekly show. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, for chatting, all that. Hope to see you again on Saturday and next Tuesday. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Go Cyclones.